Hello, everyone. We are so very happy that you're joining us for the Beyond the Score series. We're honored to have our great composer, Danielle Jagelski, and our awesome librettist or poet laureate, Yalie Saweda Kamara. Yalie Saweda Kamara.
Saweda Kamara.
Oh my goodness, Saweda. Forgive me, it's my bad, and I will get it better, I promise, moving forward. But don't let that dim your light. You're awesome and you're great. All right, y'all. So this is Here Is Here Them. And what we like to do in these conversations is just to understand a little bit more about the music and also understand a little bit more about the composer. This is our first time, though, and Jamie, I think, can agree that we've actually invited a poet to join us in this conversation. I look forward to doing this more because there's so much weight and importance happens with the text of the music. So we're fortunate to have you with us, and to make sure that you're all amplifying your own stories. I'm just going to ask you individually who you are, promote yourselves as you'd like, and let's start with Danielle. So who is Danielle Jagelski? What should we know?
Hello, thanks for having me. I am Danielle Jagelski. I'm a composer and conductor. I'm based in New York City, but I grew up in northern Wisconsin and northern Idaho. I'm from the Oneida and Ojibwe tribes with heritage of Irish and Polish settler communities as well. And my favorite thing to do is to write for voice. And part of that is because you get to work with such beautiful words. And so I was so excited to read the words Yalie wrote and get the privilege of setting those for this fantastic choir. What else about me? I don't know. I have a rabbit named Caroline. That's basically my whole life. And yeah, I like to write music, play music, and pet my bunny.
That's what's up. And then Yalie, who are you?
So my name is Yalie Saweda Kamara. I am a first-generation American. My family's from Sierra Leone. I was born in San Francisco and raised in Oakland, California. And I've been living in the Midwest for the last 8 years.
How's that going? Oh my goodness.
Going well. It's going well.
Not much of a culture shock?
Oh, there was a culture shock, but it's been a culture shock that's been generative and good to me. And I moved to Cincinnati 5 years ago to start my PhD at UC, and I finished that last year. And I'm in town, and I'm the third poet laureate of the city of Cincinnati. And I work in the area of youth arts development. I work closely with young people in the city of Cincinnati and beyond in terms of sort of amplifying their stories, and also working as the poet laureate. I get a similar privilege to work with different communities and have awesome opportunities, such as this one, to work with you all. And I'll be joining the English department, English faculty of Xavier this fall as an assistant professor of English. And so thank you. I'm one of four daughters, one of the mischievous middle children. I'm feel very privileged to be in the space of telling stories, hearing stories, receiving them, and amplifying, humanizing, and dignifying those that need to be lifted up. And so this is an incredible honor and privilege to have this life and to be working alongside important people and getting to partnership and collaborate with you all.
That's really cool. Congratulations. I can tell you firsthand, as one who's on the job market now, because I'm about to graduate with my doctorate. That ain't easy. So shout out to you securing that work.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Congratulations. That's what's up. Okay, so let's start here. Yalie, have you ever composed or interacted with musical ensembles before in your work, in your literature?
I have. I had the opportunity to work alongside a doctorate student, Sam Ritter, at IU and Jacobs School of Music. As part of his dissertation, he wrote and composed a choral and orchestral composition that used the work of two poets from IU, and I was one of them. So it was wonderful to work alongside him, to hear the way that he treated my work with the musical and choral composition, and his composition is called Morning Jewels. And so that was my first interaction, and it's amazing to see the synergy and what comes to life through those collaborations. And I'm so looking forward to hearing Danielle's work. And so it's been wonderful. It's a new way of kind of accessing your work in words, and just seeing how different sorts of modes of expression bring things to life.
Right, right. And the other way, Danielle, question to you: Have you worked with a living composer before in your writing?
Working with a poet or librettist, a
Excuse me,
little
living,
bit.
yeah, living
So
poet. Excuse me, why I
that's
say
like,
that?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit, but only on like kind of miniature scales, like yeah, like projects in school and things like that. And I've worked with a lot of poetry before, of course, but usually they're long dead people, or sometime, or I'd use my own words, but that of course is a much different process. It's like a different process too, because me as primarily like a composer, it's like, okay, I have to find words to fit within my music,
Mm,
rather than like having words and putting music to them. And
right.
so, yeah, it's been a super interesting process and a wonderful thing. Like opera is one of my biggest passions, and so I felt like a little baby opera composer, because it's like the story is primary with opera, and so to like have to work with the words as they are, rather than like morphing the words around the sounds that I want to make, was like a really cool experience.
Yeah, that's what's up. Do you Yalie, when you write, do you write hearing some sort of melodic or musical combination in your setting?
I think it depends on what I'm being inspired by. And so because I had this opportunity to work with folks that sing and music, I think that part of writing, I'm very interested in rhythm and meter. So how do the words sort of percussively sound? But having the music from the concert you all have online, I think some of that, the richness was in my mind when I was thinking about putting something together, or thinking about writing this poem, in addition to the opportunities that I've gotten to talk to you all about what this work means to you. But I think for this one specifically, absolutely music was on my mind.
That's what's up. That's what's up. And then, so then Danielle, when you read it, like, did you already? I mean, this has always been something fascinating to me that I've always wanted to ask a composer who works with a librettist, like chicken or the egg. Like, did you have a melody and then you fashioned the text to work it, or you read the text and was like, okay, let me throw that melody out and try something altogether different? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, it is kind of the question of the chicken and the egg. I think particularly with these words, it's like you read it even just one time and you hear the music in it. It was like so musical, just without, like, because I mean, working with words like this, like it's like you even have to question, like, okay, what is music? Does music have to involve, because like reading words out loud, that's also producing sound.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, are you, is it music already? And I am of the ilk that it's music already. Like, she already brought me music, and when I spoke it out into the world, it was already music. And so I just had to morph that into fitting for an ensemble of singers. And yeah, adding a little like zhuzh of my style to it, I guess. Not that it needed any zhuzhing, but it's like
Right.
so the chicken and the egg thing is definitely yeah, I think it comes, I think for me, for this one, definitely the the words for sure came first. I think the only performance note I put on this score was that like the piece should be performed with the highest focus on communicating the text. And so like tempi, breaths, and articulation are flexible. Um, Versus like sometimes I write pieces where the performance note is like must be in strict meter, or things like that. And so and I think for me, starting out, there was already so much like melody and rhythm within the words. And the challenge was trying to fit that within a form that honestly could be in a time limit. Because like like you don't want to have, like, I could have written an hour with just these words, definitely, but to
Mm-hmm.
fit everything, because it was so important to have all the words involved, because it's a full work. So that was more of the challenge of building the architecture, like the musical architecture around like the structure that was already given to me.
That's what's up. I don't know. I don't know, Jamie. Like, right? Isn't that kind of cool? I'm always so curious of how composers and poets rock together. Like, anyway. Sorry, that I geeked out on that. Thank you for that.
Yeah, it's like I geek out on it too, because it's like it's almost like you have to discover it every time again, right? Because like every writer, just as you're a conductor, like you have to discover the composer over and over again, like with every piece that you do, and like to understand or to try to understand what's happening. And so for me, the process was really like I literally like had it printed out on, like, you know, I printed out the words and I was literally like cutting them up and like putting them in like little puzzles and like being like, okay, so here, and I can do this here and I can do this here, you know. And so definitely for this one, it was for sure like the chicken and the egg thing, that I don't know, well, if the egg is first, the words were the egg first, I guess. I don't know.
And
The seed, yeah. Okay,
There we
the
go.
words were the seed, and then the little sprout was the music. Yeah.
In that same kind of realm, Yalie, I would love to hear, because I'm less familiar and I know a lot of our ensemble like how to take music theory, right, in schools. So we're a little bit more familiar with what it looks like to structure like a really basic, like 4-part choral piece, at least. I know I had to do that. But for you as a poet, what does your process look like? I really have, because I know I have written a little bit of poetry when I have absolutely had to, and it probably is not, you know, any kind of formalized correct way. I'm sure there's no correct way, but is there, like, what gets you going? Do you, you know, sit outside? Do you sit like at your desk? Are you pulling words, kind of like what Danielle was saying? Like, are you starting with just words that are coming to mind? What did that look like for you with this?
Yeah, thanks for that question. I think that this is kind of one of my favorite types of poem. I love research. I love poetry that's informed by research. And by research, I mean conversations, things you're hearing. What are different materials that you're bringing in? And I had the opportunity to speak with Harry and another ensemble member in December. And so the beginning of that process, we were driving back from Indiana to Cincinnati. And so we pulled over I was with my mentor, and we pulled over in a Starbucks, and I sat down and I interviewed them at the Starbucks, and I asked them questions about like the importance of this work. What does it mean to them? What are some of the words that this type of work elicits? And I'd spoken to Jamie and Danielle before too, just about the importance of this work. And so part of what that was thinking about the words that were rising to the top and sort of the sentiments related to our conversations, our touch points. And I remember something that you'd said, Harry. One of the things you'd mentioned was like, you know, this work is meaningful, it's important, and it's necessary, but I also can't wait until it's not necessary. I'm paraphrasing. I can't wait until there is not this sort of canon that's marginalized. There isn't this canon that's being rediscovered, but all these different groups of people will have their righteous place in this conversation of artistic expression and music. And so thinking about like around that comes the idea of surfacing, unearthing. What happens when you unearth or surface something, right? There's like light and there's like luminescence, and then there's this sort of like unearthing. And so that was something that was kind of figuring prominently. And just each person's conversation was also thinking about, this is hard work. This is labor, but this is labor that we're committed to. So how do you think about that too, and have that being infused in there? And in all of that, there's this kind of, I'm getting chills talking about it, but this sort of like resisting erasure, resisting being buried. And so there's all this, like this work requires a type of vision. It requires a type of faith too. And so all these words were kind of coming to me. And so that was one part of the process, was asking these questions. The other part was just simply sitting with them. I'm not someone that's a hot take writer. I can't write right away. That's not my ministry. I take a little bit of time to think with things and walk with things and just kind of carry these things with me. And I'd written like a page of notes in our conversations. And so it's kind of thinking about those words and starting to pull certain words out of the conversation. and thinking about those words themselves as like source material, as well as what are the adjectives or the sort of sentiments and feelings, and like sort of like particular like things that were popping up. And so, you know, like I have the words like sacred pops up, wind, legacy, lyric, bomb, calm, healing, harmonized, incandescent. So all these things that just are about, I feel like awakening and really like rendering something in a space that it deserves and preserving it. So again, I think it's, for me, research, interviewing, reflection, and then just continue to like chisel. And for whatever reason, the poem felt like it needed to be narrow and it needed to like be like a long breath. And so that's kind of what is informing the shape of the poem. It didn't feel like a poem that needed to be wide. It needed to be deep. And that was a reflection of what you all shared with me and what I was carrying as some of the messages and sentiments, and how I would want to honor something that really matters for the moment and for the future. That's all.
No, I just like, it's just so
That's so
cool
beautiful.
just to hear someone's process. It's one of those, as a choral conductor, and I mean that adjective specifically because I've conducted other things, but my mainstay is choral music. Like, I'm realizing how very little time I've spent actually conversing with the librettist, the poet. Like, break down for me what this text means to you. We have conversations tons with composers and have conversations amongst ourselves about what the music means to us as ensembles, but to just break down this text. And I always imagine, however corny this is, and you can get me together, but I really want you to tell me where you were when you did this. Like, I just imagine poets to all either be sitting in a cabin looking among the woods, or sitting on a beach, or like right up against a tree post, and it's just vast wilderness and peace and calm around them, and then that's where inspiration comes from. But when you
Harry, I'm about to really let you down.
that's what I'm saying, get me together. No, I want to hear the realism.
So let's say I spent great amounts of time in the Midwest thinking about this. I thought about this when I was in Nashville. I carried this with me through 3 different states, but the poem itself was composed on my bed. I sat on my bed and I composed it, and then
your
I read
resting
it
place, your piece.
in my resting place, and then I read it to my mom, who's like my muse and cheerleader, and she's like, "Yeah, all right, it's a go." So that's the process. That was the process.
Mamas know.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm gonna let Jamie take it from here, but I remember the first time I read this, I was just like, wow. It made me think, is this really who we are? Like, are we all of that? Like, but the way you piece us together. Like, Jamie, what was your thoughts first time you read it?
Thank you.
Yeah, I cried when I read it, and then I also called my mom and read it to her, and she also cried because my mom is also my muse. But I thought it said what I was thinking. I can't always like put into words like what we're trying to accomplish or what this group means to me personally, or to the other singers, or to our audience, and I feel like it hit all of those objectives perfectly. And just like you said, it was narrow and deep and like condensed, right? And sometimes I feel like when I'm talking about this work, I keep going on, and different things come to mind because there's so many different things that we want to change. And I think it just really highlighted like what our focus is and what we're trying to do, at the same time being very all-encompassing. And that's what I love so much about it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
For sure. Like, I think like it was amazing that, like you said, narrow and deep, but in that is had all these different tentacles of complexity, like the idea of the connection of history and ancestry, like the perched atop the shoulders of ancestors, the ghost of hope, like, but then at the same time talking about until my suffering is no longer a foreign word on your lips. So we have this idea of paying homage to the underrepresented artists and musicians of the past who made it comfortable for us to even be in this place in 2022, 23, but then also recognizing that we ain't nowhere near where we're supposed to be. And there are so many stories that are still untold and still grossly underrepresented. and trying to press that forward. And then still we want to do it together. So ending with my tongue is your tongue. Like, let's, like, I don't want to do it without you. I want you to come with me on this journey. I mean, it was just so brilliantly put together. Like,
Yeah.
I am not a wordsmith by no means. And this reminded me for sure that I am not.
Well, I
Like,
have to thank y'all also
yeah.
because I think this poem would not be possible if there wasn't a level of candor and honesty and really sharing what your hopes are and really thinking about what's being pushed against. And so the poem is also a reaction and a reflection to the honesty and the material and just kind of the desire that you all shared. Sometimes it's hard to share those things in conversation. And so thank you for giving me something to build. You gave me the material to build too. So thank you for that.
That's what's up. It's, I mean, yeah, like, because I mean, I can't speak to Jamie's interview, but mine with you, I just felt like Raina and I were just throwing noodles at a wall. Like, we were just throwing out everything that we were feeling, and you just be able to, in such a concise manner, eloquent manner, like artistic manner, to really just say what we were thinking and feeling. It was brilliant. And then I pass it over to Danielle because the way you wrote it. So I'm a rhythmic person, love rhythm. I'm Black on purpose. So anytime you go to those things that, like, when you open the track, open the song with like heavy syncopation, like you talking my love language, like I'm already there. Like, and I know you know that about me, this couple years we worked together. So I just like for you to start right da 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 da. One of those where you could already just be bobbing your head while you listen to I don't know. So I mean, but I'm talking for you. What were you thinking when you because that was some of the main themes that you had were the rhythmic ostinato that you had at the end, the chant like text that you had, just a and then that syncopated melody that was passed around from voice to voice. Talk to me about some of those underlying themes.
Yeah, like well, I've been lucky that this is the third piece that you guys will sing of mine, which I'm so like grateful for. And I've written for you guys before. And so yeah, you get to learn an ensemble and like what they want, you know, what you guys want and what you guys what you connect to. And so that's like collaboration's also like my main, I love collaborating. And so like I don't want to write, like I say like all the time, like we are writing the piece. Like I'm not writing the piece. If I was writing the piece, I would write for electronics. Like if I wanted to do it, if I was going to be like that, then I would write for computers, you know? And so that, because I'm so lucky to have this like relationship with you guys, I knew that that we needed something like uplifting. And it's true, like rhythm is something that it's something that everybody connects to. I think what's so important about rhythm is that everybody has it internally, you know, like that's the first thing babies will like dance to. Like you have little kids. I used to nanny this little girl, and there was like a motorcycle outside the window one day, and it was like chunk 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 chunk, right? And then she started like dancing to it. You know, and so it's just something that people all connect to from from every part of the world and all different cultures, and everybody's gonna bob their head to it. And it's also, rhythm is something that can so like viscerally be built upon too, right? Like da 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 da, and then by the end, you know, the like da 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 da, and then with repetition, like it just really builds. And so I thought, and there was so many like licks in this music already, in this poem already, like you know, I some of my favorite parts are of course the end, but like, so how I structured it, I was like, okay, we have to like tell the story, we have to set the precedence, we have to be like, okay, something's coming and here we are. And then we tell some of the story, but then there becomes like, yeah, a little bit of a B section that's more meditative, and that's the part that like we harmonize in incandescence. And I just like love these, like you just taste those words, and like we harmonize rise to incandescence, unearth the embers of joy from the ash of sorrow. See, there's that syncopation again, right? Like from the ash of sorrow, and it's just like so many licks going on. And at the end, it also, I love to combine those things. And so we had like the meditative the repetition of meditation, but the storytelling and like the like here we are, like your tongue, my tongue, familiar kin, remember, remember. Like I love this like text because it's so uplifting, but it's so powerful. It's not uplifting in the way that it's like letting people it's not uplifting in the way that we're taking people away from the struggle. We're showing it to them. It's here, but it's also, it's not depressing. We're not like, oh, look at this pain that's happening. We're like, no, look at what we are here and look at where we're going.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think that like I think it was all in there already. You know, my job was easy because the words were already music, you know.
Right.
So I mean, like, thank you so much, Yalie, for writing this poem. Like, and I'm serious, like you could write an hour of music with this poem. And so it was like that was my only challenge of trying to get it all.
Yeah.
Oh, we lost you at the end there, or maybe it was
Yeah.
just me. I
No.
think your
Yeah.
audio
What was the
cut out the last thing.
last thing we heard, Danielle, was that was the hard part, trying to get it all in there.
Oh,
Because
okay. Can you hear me now? Is it
Mhm.
okay? Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, that's basically it. I was saying that yeah, like the hard part was fitting it all in, and that was like the only like challenge of the piece because it's already there, you know. And like once you, it's kind of the same for a composer as I think it is for any creator. Like you just you know, you roll these things over in your head. Like we harmonize in incandescence, we harmonize in incandescence, and like incandescence, like it's just like such a beautiful thing. Like it's already there, you know. So it's just so fun. I'm so excited to hear real live people sing it and not just my MIDI playback.
right, right. And I want to ask you about your solo part that you inserted here, because it says ad lib, rhythm and pitch, belt above the rest of the choir. And I can tell you as a choir director, we never have a composer note that says belt. Like it's never, you never have it written in the score that you have permission to belt. And I just, well, first I was like, oh, okay then. And so I just want to make sure I have this right. Rhythm and pitch, and you have it all in like the rhythmic notation type of what you're saying here is that the soloist uses what you have is more like a structure, a suggestion, but they can basically do whatever they want with the text that's written. Is that
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Like, so because we're doing like, yeah, this ostinato thing of like saying it over, saying the last like stanza over and over. And I thought that when we get to the second to last stanza, we sing each other into a new body, a steadfast eternity, until your blood is my blood, until my suffering no longer a foreign word on your lips. I feel like you can hear so much. To me, that part like screamed solo, especially the your blood is my blood. Like I think and so and I could just imagine somebody like a really powerful voice like above the choir really like belting that out, because that's almost like, you know, kind of like the, to me it was like the shout out moment, right? Like it's like, oh, we're almost here but we still have a little bit to say. And I think like when you bring that extra element of voice on top of that, then it people will listen in a different way too, because that's like such an important, it's all the words are important, but I brought everybody down with my little you know, my little like B section and the harmonizing, you know, everything's like a little bit like this, and then we have to like build it back up, and people, you have to be like, okay, we're listening now. You have like listen, we've had our calm, and now like let's get back to the party kind of. And yeah, and so, and I mean it's the same rules in that thing, like rules as the rest of the piece. Like it's like you have to sing the text, and so like I think the best way to perform that would probably just be for whoever's the soloists are, is also to just like speak the words, just like roll them over in their head and in their voice. And the ostinato underneath it is intentionally like repeated in the same way, so it becomes easier to riff on top of it. And yeah, and I mean, like, just the voices in your guys' choir, like, come on, people need to belt, we need to let it out. So.
Yeah, that's exactly. Like, you can't just have these race cars in a garage. Sometimes you got to race them. Like, they can't just be on display. Sometimes you got to drive them.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see what comes of that. Just as a conductor, I don't like to coach ad libs that much, like, because then I think it's not true, it's not honest. So I'm excited to hear how whomever's interested in soloing on it, how they interpret it, because I think that's a really cool thing that you actually just wrote in. And again, there's not a lot of choral compositions that make it this free. And I think that's kind of cool that you trust us that much, that like, hey, this is an idea, but I'm telling you from the beginning, you ain't gotta do it exactly as I wrote it.
Yeah, well, I mean, thank you guys for giving me that freedom, honestly. You know, like, it's like it's so true. Like, it's yeah, I feel like the voices and the like artistry that's in the ensemble, it's like sometimes choral music does, yeah, like put the race car in the garage, and you're like, why? And so, and I think the more like my process, like as I've been going, it's less controlling, like what I was saying before. Like, if I wanted to control everything, then I would write for electronics. And so it's like, why not people seeing the notes that feel best in their voice, seeing the words that are feel best in their mouth, you know, and to really like keep it going. Like, I think like more and more I'm constantly writing like little notes, like repeat as many times as needed, you know, like, because like, who am I to say like what performance, how much do we need here? I don't know, but you do, because you're the one doing it, you know. So
yeah, well, I mean, right on. Like, I dig that. I dig that. So, and Yalie, I promise we're going to get you back into the conversation, but
No,
let me just
I am
have one more.
luxuriating in all of this. This is a new dimension for me. And that word ostinato, I'm like, how can I put that in a poem? That is so delicious. No, this is wonderful. I feel, yeah, this is awesome to hear some of the behind the scenes and the kind of like the building blocks for, yeah, this is, I'm all here. This is exciting.
Right on. Well, I want to go back just a little bit more to Little Ones, Danielle. And so, like you said earlier in this conversation, that it is different to set the text yourself to the music than to use a poet, whether living or pre-existing. So I want to talk to me about the compositional process, how it was different with these very powerful and moving text of Little Ones. I promise my first 3 years wherever I'm working is going to be right back in our program, because it's something that needs to be said. It's a story it's significantly underrepresented and untold. And I'm not here to say good job on such a terrible story, but what I will say is your presentation of Little Ones last year, your gift to us of Little Ones last year, and Jamie, you can tell me if I'm wrong here, is exactly the goal of Hear Us, Hear Them, was to tell the stories of communities that we may know and we just completely pass on the side, put aside, or we just don't want to negotiate or converse with at all. And Little Ones put it right in our face in such a moving and powerful way. Like, but I really want to know, what's it like to be composer and poet with something that's such a personal story, and then compare that to the powerful poetry of Hear Us, Hear Them and Anthem, and it's personal also, but not yours, so to speak. So talk to me about that juxtaposition. Jamie, please.
I just want to interrupt real quickly. Danielle or Harry, maybe if you could give some more context around that piece and what it's about for Yalie and for anyone else who may listen to this who was not around during that time.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Little Ones was the commission I wrote for y'all last season. and Little Ones was a about a 9-minute 10-minute piece about the residential school, not necessarily about the residential school system, but in as a little song cycle for the children that survived the residential schools and also the ones who didn't. And because my mother is a residential school survivor, and so it's a subject I've been thinking about for like many years, and I'm sure I'll continue writing about. Like, I mean, I've been thinking about like a whole opera for it since like 2015, but then I was like so excited to have this like awesome ensemble that's so open to doing literally like whatever. I'm like, do this, and they're like, okay. So and so that's a gift. Yeah, and so that piece with my I think it's in that piece it's kind of obvious that I'm not a poet, that I love words and I work with words. And I think honestly, like me writing my own words for things is sometimes just like a thing of circumstance, and like, and of course it's like I love the words, I love to like work with the words, but it it is better for me to tell somebody those words that is a words person, right? And so yeah, like something with Little Ones, like I think it's clear, like there's so many, some of the movements have one word in them, because I'm like, okay, I know this one word, and just the way like my brain works, like I'm mulling over this one word, or like, or I take words that are already existing, like from the Doctrine of Discovery or the Constitution, like all these things, and you put them in there, you piece them as if they're bricks within the composition, because they are. And so even though I wrote my own words for the piece, they were just like compositional bricks that I put in, except for the last movement, which did have a little bit of poetry in there, and it was 3 lines of poetry really. And I worked really, it was hard to work on those, but I like asked my friends, I'm like, do this, do that. And so I think it is a different process, but it's not my like preferred process, honestly, because I think that like the best of me comes out while working with people, and being inspired by them, and them seeing me and me seeing them, like, yeah, hear us, hear them, hear us, hear them, like, yeah. So that's kind of, I hope that answers the question a little bit, but yeah.
And did you have the same process? Were you just in a comfortable bedding and you just scripted it on a pad, or like how did it go for you?
Yeah, I sit at my kitchen table at the beginning with I'm super analog, like at the beginning. So I print out everything and say a little prayer for the trees. And I cut, I paste, I do colors. I try to like, I count. Like it was funny with this one. Like it literally was like counting words, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like building a structure that I want, like a musical structure that I wanted to like try to fit in, that gave justice to the structure that already exists in the poem. And so for me, yeah, I need like a lot of space. I need to like see everything, all the blocks that are in front of me. And then like after I kind of start to build this little structure, I usually improvise on the piano, or I just like say the words over and over, and like then the melody kind of comes out of it, and then you start to hear it, and then you can like build from there.
Yeah. All right. That's cool. But end of the day, so to speak, you would prefer to work with text that already exists.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's so much. I think for me right now, like, I mean, maybe ask me in 20 or 10 years, 20 years, maybe, or if you would have asked me 5 years ago or something, I think that music for me is just, it's so collaborative, like I like, there's a reason that I'm a composer conductor, because I think just composing is too lonely for me, honestly. Like to me, those two things are so they're so connected, inherently connected in like myself as an artist. And so I think like as I'm growing as an artist, like I just think like I'm so inspired by like all collaboration, and something that I miss when I'm composing is the immediate like feedback and immediate like artistry that I can like hold in my hand that I have when I'm conducting. And so by collaborating with somebody, then you get that, you know, then that, even though it's in a different way, it's not like a live collaboration necessarily, like it is in conversations and things like that. You still have all this information with like in front of you that's like living, and it's just, I'm just really into collaboration right now, I think, and have been more and more.
I dig that. I dig that. And knowing a little bit about your story, I know that how we were in lockdown COVID kind of affected that type of movement as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The
Right.
first piece you guys sang of mine was a piece I wrote in COVID, and it's like, come with me under my coat. And I was just like, because it's so, ugh, COVID was like the worst for me. I hated COVID because, yeah, it's like you're just like speaking into the, like, you know, the nothingness. And I think for some people that's so inspiring to them, like they love it, like they love looking out into the universe and having like nothing but them, like nothing echoing back, you know, that gives them so much space, and that gives
Mhm.
them so much yeah, that's like the, but for me it's like I want everything to come back, like I want to be bombarded
Mm.
by all this material and by all this like everything, even if it's overwhelming at first, because I just like, I want to, I'm a visceral person, and I want to live in the world, so that's like kind of how I compose too, like I want to compose in the world, not outside of it. And not
Mhm.
that composing outside of it is worse or better or anything, it's just a different way. Yeah, but
Yeah.
I love the world, and I love collaborating, and it's just like so amazing to see people's work and to be so lucky, you know, like
Yeah.
I'm sure every musician feels like that, you know, like you find something that you just connect, you're just like, wow, I'm so lucky to be doing
Yeah.
this.
I think us as artists, it's this complicated relationship we have with whatever our craft is because it's the thing that brings us joy, but conversely, it's the thing that brings us the most madness, the most frustration, the most aggravation. Like it's, and then it's also weird to have a conversation with people because they're like, "So what do you like to do for fun? Music. So what do you do for a living? Music." And they just look at you as like less serious for whatever reason, but it is what it is. Like this is what we do. But Yalie, I promise I was gonna get back to you, and I really do. I want to I want all of us to learn a little bit more about your story. Like, let's talk about, like, did you just wake up with the pen and a pad in your hand? Like, were you born that way? Like, did you watch Love Jones as a child and was like, okay, I'm gonna beat him? Like, did you go to a poetry slam? Like, what put this relationship with the spoken word and the written word in your connection?
Yeah. I kind of feel like I didn't have a choice. So, my name is Yalie. Yalie comes from Jelly Muso. Jelly Muso is the name of a cast of female storytellers on the west coast of Africa. Jelly Musa is the guy. They're griots, essentially. That's what my first name comes from, and my middle name comes from. Like, it's some derivative of little black girl in Arabic, and then my last name means teacher. And so, like, I never like didn't have a choice. And
Wow.
my parents wanted to be like a medical doctor. I was like, you got a poetry doctor, so let's just split the difference.
And that's your fault, if we're being honest.
Yes,
Like
it's
the
their
way they
fault.
named
Look,
you.
I was brought into this, but I'd say that it's always been with me. And I was just thinking too, just about like, yes, there's like formal education, but just growing up in a household with family from West Africa, from Sierra Leone, and the tradition of storytelling, and even thinking about my mom's side of the family, she's my mother's a Sierra Leonean Creole, so she's a descendant of freed enslaved people. So slaves that returned to, I say returned because who knows where we're actually from on the, like in West Africa, but returned to Sierra Leone. And so even like the language that she speaks, so that my first language is like a combination of different languages. It's English and Yoruba and Igbo and Portuguese, like in French, all rolled into one. And so there's always like, I was just been thinking about, it's like, wow, like each time my mom speaks to me, she's like speaking hundreds of years into me. And so I grew up in that womb. You know what I'm saying? And so it's always
Can we just pause right there? Because I don't know what you're saying. And I've always been so, and this is not hate. It's a genuine envy. I've always been so envious of those who can speak directly to their roots in Africa. Because I mean, I talk to my daughter all the time that eventually we'll hit a wall. I can tell her that like the earliest I can give her is my father's side is Arkansas, my mama's side is Alabama. But baby girl, I can't tell you where in Africa we're from. And then we talk real history. I'm like, then that's on purpose. They did that on purpose. They stripped that from us. Absolutely. But so for those who can take it like that, like you can speak directly to Sierra Leone, and you can talk about how they were even here enslaved and then were able to make their way back to the motherland. Like I'm envious of that in a cool way.
Thank you.
And just
And there's the back is up to a certain point too, because it's like my mom's name is Agatha Wilson Cole. That's kind of weird for you think of someone from Africa, right? And so like thinking about that sort of history. And so there are,
but there's history in that too, because then again it tells the whole journey, right?
Absolutely.
Right, yeah.
But also like Creole people didn't exist before slavery. And so there's all these ways that like where are our stories where there's obscurity, I think maybe we intuit things about where we come from, intuit things about what we know, and we feel certain things in certain places, or maybe my connection to the story of Here Is Here Them is some sort of resonance or something that deals with my past as well. Right. And so kind of thinking about that. So I think like I've been thinking more deeply about that. Like maybe it's in my family, and my grandmother, she was orphaned at a young age, and she had like a thick 6th grade education, and she had to stop working in Sierra Leone and stop going to school and start taking care of her family. But she's someone who spoke a lot of dialects. And so she's always been excited about language. Though she didn't have access to school, she's excited about language. My mother, she came to America and she pursued college to a degree, and then she's a stay-at-home mother because she wanted to take care of us, but she also sacrificed something. And so I think that and she's someone that's an incredible wordsmith, and is probably my first poet. And so thinking about language and sacrifice and lineage and womanhood and my family, I think I'm part of that. I am part of that lineage. And so each sacrifice and every prayer for me has paid itself forward to this point. And I think that's one version of the story. Another version is that I became a poet by flipping through TV late night, 11th grade, PBS. Some guy had a cool hat on. I was like, who's that guy? And I doubled back, and it was like a youth poetry slam. And I didn't know that young people could be participants in poetry. The ways that poetry was taught to me was you recite others' poetry, you don't write your own, right? And like they had pockets of my life where it was very clear that there were all sorts of people writing poems. And thinking about like my upbringing in Oakland, I didn't learn the national anthem until I was in high school. I learned the Black national anthem growing up. And so that's what I knew as the
Talk your talk. I love that. I love that that's your first thing.
And so like thinking about like those sorts of things, like, like you get these glimpses that there's more, and then they kind of disappear in schooling. And so I saw that thing on TV. I watched the documentaries. Like I didn't know that young people could be a part of this. And there's a space where adults would listen to young people. We could say something and there is an audience. And that changed everything for me in that moment. I was like, I told my parents I was so dramatic. I was like, I don't want a 17th birthday present. I just want a slam. I just want to be on the slam team. I just want to write poems. And it just really moved me. And so that moment changed my life. And it started off in spoken word and in slam, and was part of like to the National Youth Poetry Slam teams for the Bay Area. The first years that I applied. And then there's a period of time where I was like, oh, I need to do something else aside from poetry. I need to do nonfiction. I need to do prose. So I went through that whole period, and I spent many years just sort of like maybe absorbing and not really feeling like I was maybe a writer in some ways. And then, I think when there's art that is calling to you, you just can't kind of outrun it. And it just kept on nagging at me. And so I decided that I wanted to give myself a chance again and go to school for my MFA. But I will say, if I could double back to high school, I think, again, what I was told was poetry was very narrow. And it was very much like, you need to learn these things so you can talk about them, not necessarily do them. And so I think in high school, when I found this avenue outside of high school, I learned that writing was participatory. It was alive. It was happening in the moment, and it was very communal. All of my experiences learning how to write poems outside of school were communal experiences. And so that's something that's really important. So it really resonates with me to be in this space. It's part of like my ethos as an artist. And like Danielle talking about collaboration, like that's where it's at. You know, poetry can be super isolating and lonely and worth it though, obviously, but like it's nice to be in spaces where you can collaborate and build together to hear what poetry means to other people.
Right.
And so I guess like I got my MFA to continue with my writing, and got to the point where I was urged by a mentor to continue down the path of education. And so I think what my PhD taught me was it taught me how to read better. And so I know how to read better.
Break it down for me.
I have a
Please,
greater
sorry.
I have a greater sensitivity to words outside of my own. We have different messages, and sometimes the messages are in someone's voice, or maybe somebody's talking about a river, maybe somebody's talking about the sky, maybe somebody's talking about their eyes closed, and like, what is the story there? What is the story you do not want to tell? And that's something else that shows up a lot. And I think I've gotten a sensitivity to words, and also thinking about the constellation of our stories, and learning about how there is continuing to learn that there's poetry everywhere. You know, and my work is thinking a lot around exile and migration, and thinking about who we are when we arrive in certain places, and are we accepted or are we not accepted, and how do we transform the spaces that we're in. And so with that said, I'm thinking, you know, like I could, you know, pull certain poems onto my dissertation list. And I was like, well, I might as well put Fresh Prince of Bel-Air theme song on my list for my dissertation.
Got one little fight.
It's a story about exile. It's a story about exile. The theme song's about exile. And so just thinking about, again, like, I guess with my story of poetry is like, you write, but are you engaging in the world around you? And is your work making places safer? Is your work critiquing things? Is your work dignifying? Are you going to some of the scariest parts of yourself when you're writing? And I think that I'm excited about mining vulnerability. And people often say you shouldn't be a sentimental writer. Well, aren't our feelings all we have? Our sentiments are what we have. And so I want to champion and herald that, and do it in as many ways as possible. And when I'm not writing, it's about continuing to connect to the spaces around me. And so that's a little bit about my writing story.
I dig that. All right, so I gotta ask, so you go back to 17, 18-year-old self, like if you go back and read some of your slam poetry now, does it still connect? Like, do you still be like, oh yeah, that's still my vibe?
Well, you know, it's awesome. I'm a geriatric millennial, which means I'm 38, which means a lot of the stuff that I have is not recorded. It's not on YouTube, can't be found, can be found on a CD if you have a CD player.
Watch it, CDs.
With that said, yes, of course it still stands. But I do think some of the things that mattered to me then still matter to me now. And some of them think about the people that matter. I like to write about my mother a lot. I like to write about my body in particular places. I like to write about healing, or endeavoring towards healing. And so I think some of those things still do matter. And I think if there's anything that stayed the same, as community is really important. The people around us are really important. And sharing your space for poetry and for arts is really important. So I think those are things that have not changed for me.
Okay, that's what's up. And so, you're probably like me, because you said geriatric millennial, so you probably remember Def Poetry Slam being.
Oh
yeah. So those were like, they had a very particular trope. They were combative, and they were confrontational, and they were performative. But they also stuck with me. Like I was like, oh my goodness, like Saul Williams, like those types. I was like, oh my goodness. Like, so was your poetry in that type of vein? Were you in that, who was that poet? She presented something like 7 years ago, and the poem was I Look Like. It was forgive me, it was called FUCK, What I Look Like I Look Like. And she just got up there and went off on how her place in a predominantly white institution and how she's treated. And what I moved past that, but like, were you in that style of confrontational and combative language? Was your poetry performative in those type of
I think it was. I mean, it was. And I was like, wow, you can swear out loud on a microphone and there's thousands of people in the audience. I'm going to give this a go, right? So there was a sort of excitement to feel boundless and to not feel sort of trapped. And I think that was an opportunity to express what it means to kind of feel a bit weightless, because I think that I went to a predominantly white high school, and there are particular ways that students in those spaces, some students are permitted more liberties and movement than other students. And I felt that at that institution. So this was an opportunity thing for me to practice and perform a type of freedom. I'm someone now, I don't really, I mean, there's some profanity in my work, but not a lot. It's not something that I like, it's just not something that I really go for in my writing, in my personal life, obviously, but like not on the page. But the particular things, I think what I realized actually in the course of being on the slam team is that I was more compelled towards writing things that didn't necessarily have to be performed in a particular way. And I found for me that at some point, like the performance was the most important thing, and then it turned into the writing being the most important thing. And I think now there's value absolutely in both of them. There's people that read their work and you're like, do you actually like what you wrote? It doesn't feel like the sort of we call it having your poems back. Like, do you have the back of your own work? Like, does it feel good as you're performing? So I practice and I rehearse. And while I would not consider myself a spoken word artist or a slam poet, there are definitely facets of that I find incredibly important. And also thinking about, like, how do the words sound? How does it sound out loud? Am I tripping over the words? Is there something to reconsider with like an aph, refrain, all these different things? Like, what's the meter like in this poem? And all these particular things. And so that's been helpful in thinking about, both performance as well as written work. And there's like thinking about just what are the different ways that page and stage can work together to help me express myself. When I'm reading my poem or when someone is reading my poem on the page or hearing it.
Yeah. Do you, when you hear your poem recited, so let's say you're just sitting in the audience and someone's reading, do you find yourself like, I would have paced that differently, or that's not exactly the cadence I wanted for the point of that stanza, so to speak?
I don't think so. I think it's always a treat when somebody's reading your work out loud. And so I think that when I hear it, I'm like, oh, that's a new way of saying that, or that's a new way, or that's a new breath that I didn't consider, or wow, that's interesting that they would turn that into like one line. I don't think I don't feel like I would like direct certain things. And I actually had the opportunity of having a high school student read one of my poems for a Blink photo focus display or project that was at Hughes High School. And he practiced a lot, which was really awesome that he spent so much time rehearsing. But hearing him read the poem, it made me cry. I'm like, whoa, he opened up the poem in a way that I didn't know it could be opened up. And I think when you have the gift of someone looking at your work and reading it and reading it back to you, all you can do is actually just like bask in that and learn. You can learn. It's an opportunity to learn and deepen your own literacy around your work.
I like that, deepen your own literacy. So like you'll hear their interpretation and reflect on that when you reread.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the emphasis on certain words are like, this is what you're hearing is, I'm hearing my story, but I'm also hearing their story, the way that they're reading it. I'm like, oh, that's what matters in your life. Those are things that you're placing priority on, or this is what matters to you chronically. And so it is opening up another door to the work. And it's beautiful to learn from that.
I dig that. That's what's up. I am incredibly grateful for spoken word and the poetry slam, because I was on the shallow end of the pool when it came to poetry, especially in high school, because all they wanted to give us was Shakespeare. And I just couldn't rock with it. Like it felt like something else to me. But that it just and admittedly there's benefits to a performative aspect, because it can draw some of us more shallow listeners to some of the deeper ends of the conversation. So anyway, but I can't wait to read more of your poetry.
Thank you so much.
And things like that. And well, I want to we're going to close it out in just a second, but Danielle, I want to give you the opportunity the same way, like talk about your journey from composer to conductor and all the things in between, going from the Midwest to big New York. Like what did you wake up? Were you born with a baton in your hand? I mean, what?
Definitely not. So I grew up, my dad's side of the family is super Catholic, and so there was basically like the lady at church was getting old and couldn't play the piano very well anymore, and so they were like, you can be an altar server or you can sing in the choir and play piano and stuff. And so I was like, okay, well, I'd rather sing in the choir. And so that's
and how old were you?
Young, like 7, 8, around there. And then of course I was really lucky to have some really great music teachers as a kid, choir teachers and band teachers. But when it comes to writing, music was always a big thing. And on my indigenous side too, my uncle is a singer and music maker, and there's always been that. We've always done like ceremony and powwow and everything. So that's always been a part of my sound world that I didn't, it took me a long time to marry those two sides of things, and
what an interesting American, like Catholic, and then you hanging out at powwows. Like I just dig
it's a complicated
dichotomy.
thing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's Yalie would probably be really interested in, since you're focused on migration and that, like the Catholic natives, there are Methodists or, this, it's a complicated subject for sure. And very interesting one, but it gives such a, there's like two different worlds, but they affect you, especially like sonically, right? Like the sounds that come through of those things. And I also, so my first writing was, I learned a little bit on guitar, and I would write songs like in high school and things like that. And then when I went to undergrad, I went to Hamline University in Minneapolis and St. Paul, and I didn't study music at first because kind of like what you were saying, Yalie, like I thought that music was for me to learn about other people's music. I didn't think it was something for me to create. I didn't think that me singing my songs was like creating, right? Like it was more like just like journaling in a way. And then I was like, I had a great teacher that was like, well, if you feel like you have something to give and you don't give it, then you're taking it away. So why would you want to do that? And so that's when I started writing music. And then when you write music, sometimes it's bad at the beginning and nobody wants to conduct it. So then I started conducting my own music, and now I don't conduct my own music, thank God. But I love conducting other people's music. And so that's kind of my story within that. But I definitely, Yalie, it's so profound. They how you were saying that people say don't be a sentimental writer. And that whole concept, because that definitely exists in like composition worlds, of course, too. But I totally agree. It's like, why are we trying to be to me, that's just it's excluding people, right? Like, why are we trying to be like, no, look at my academic, look at this bleeps and bloops music that I made, and like, it's, yeah.
And Danielle, if we're being honest, like, the compositions that we study the most and are still the most regularly performed almost always have some sort of story behind it. Like almost always, like even in the most classical of spaces, even in the most model composers. So yeah, Beethoven, but then we talk about but what was the story behind Beethoven's Ninth Symphony? Like what was he trying to say about his country? Like, so there was sentiment like all up and through, like, right? Or
absolutely
the things we love about Mozart and Beethoven is their connections with their father, the connection with Beethoven with his nephew and taking him in, or him losing his hearing and how that affect him musically and emotionally, and when do you see that in his music? But I mean, like, let's keep it a buck. Like, that's the stuff we connect to still. Like, I don't know why we work so hard to go away from it.
Yeah, we literally have years of classes in it. That's what music history is, right? Like
Right.
you're like, oh, and Brahms was in love with so and so, and he's a big sad
Yes.
boy,
Yes. Like, and
You're
again, and then
so-
the things that we actually perform on Saturday and Sunday nights in these concert series and even in like professional orchestras is Ein Deutsches Requiem. And it's
Mhm.
the human requiem. Like, we're talking about something deep and emotional. And that's the thing that we're still performing to 300 years later. So, like, let's stop lying to each other about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But please
Absolutely.
continue. So I interjected. You were talking about
Oh no, that I mean that's great.
composition and
You're saying everything that I think. Yeah, definitely. No, I mean that's what I think about music and my relationship to it as well. Like I don't see a reason. There was definitely a time like when I was like, oh, okay, I need to be more like academic in this, and like theory is a thing. Now I'm like, theory is fake. Literally, music is fake. Like, I mean, this is all fake. So like,
right.
we...
Like, the music was created and then we made theory around the music. Again,
yes.
we never introduced it that way. We get into music theory 1 and we start breaking things down, harmony, and then we don't get until graduate school and find out that, wait a minute, so that structure wasn't even established until, you know what I'm saying? Like, and then
Yes.
we learned that this structure was established because this dude listened to music from 50 miles around him, and now we've decided that it's standard when it's really
Yeah,
just Europe and Germany and Austria. Like, and there's some racial
absolutely.
components to that, but I want to get into that on this interview. But I'm just saying, like, that ain't all the music in the world, dude. Chill out. But we done built a whole structure on theory and without actually breaking down the musical components that established theory.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like, what is like, to me, like that style of like to write in a theoretical way or in this like academic way, or it's like, how can that be, since collaboration is what a lot of people are so inspired by, how can that be collaborative if like you are just working under this structure that's already built by whoever, and like that's cool. I mean, like that's a cool thing to learn and a thought experiment and to like explore and poke around in, but like is that really art if you're like maybe I go back and forth a lot on that, on like serialism and stuff. Right, like I don't know
Yeah.
if it was art. I think it was more science, which is also so
Right.
important, but
Right. And we have to, that in context, that was a reaction to, if we're basing all of our music on Germany, and look what Germany just did, World War II, maybe we should react against Germany a little bit and get rid of all of that emotion, and let's just make it this serialism or this
yeah.
yeah.
It was needed in the moment. It was needed in the moment for them. And so then that begs the question, like, what's needed in this moment
Well
for
said.
us now?
Well said. Yeah. Go ahead, Danielle. I was going to ask you a question about how you transition into composition, because that wasn't your major in music, was it?
Oh, well, my undergrad was composition, but then my
Oh,
grad is
excuse
in
me.
conducting, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, but I stopped composing for a while, actually, because I think I was just it was hard. Composing is very hard,
Mhm.
And I think but that was good for me, like I think I was I learned so much from conducting and from life, that when I came back to, if I would have stayed with composing, I probably, it would have been like what Yalie was saying. Like I was like, do you even like music? Do I even like music? you know and
Right.
now I've learned like so much, like of course I like music, and there's
Yeah.
like music everywhere, and everything, like you make a sound in the world, and that's like it's
Right.
music.
Right. And then, I mean, again, we graduate from the structures that tell us this is the degree that you have to have, and it's the only way to get the degree. And then you graduate from it, and then you look up and you're like, I can do whatever I want. Like I literally can do whatever I want. All I need is someone to want to perform it, because you're saying you're not performing your own compositions anymore. Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like it gives a sour sometimes I feel like there's just so many good musicians, and I'm like, why should I not spread it around? Like I'm
Mm,
happy to write the piece, but I want to I like have this little baby. It's like I like birth this little baby, and it needs to go to college with somebody else.
yeah.
So
I mean, is your perspective the same as Yalie's in the sense of you are rediscovering your own work when you're listening to how another ensemble or performer interprets it?
yes, absolutely. I mean, yeah, nothing is the in my brain, like everything. I'm always surprised what comes out. Like, of course, notation can only go so far,
Right.
so it's like even if I try to be super specific of like, okay, we're gonna create this sound, or of course, from before, like what things sound like, you would never really know what people are gonna connect with, where that sits in somebody's like voice and how
Mhm.
it blends with everything around it, like the space that it's being sung in. And there's just so many elements that are like that's like where the music lies.
Mhm.
Like I'm just like putting there, yeah, there's only so much notation, that there's only so much I can even write down. And like the music lies in like all of these little nuances. And that's just like the most beautiful thing. I don't think like the music, it doesn't exist until it's sung like in the world, and so it's like, yeah, I like wrote it on this paper, but it's not born yet, like I haven't heard.
Mm.
I'm sure you guys are rehearsing it, but so it's alive to you, but it's still like a little egg over here for me, and so I'm
Right.
very excited.
All right. That's what's up. Okay, so we are going to wrap things up now, and we're going to let Jamie give you another question, closing question.
Yeah, so I would just love to hear from both of you what you hope that the singers, Harry and I, the audience get from this piece. Like what is one takeaway from this piece?
That was going to be my question as well, but shout out to
Great
Jamie,
minds
our
think alike.
executive
There we
director.
go.
Our executive director.
I hope that for me, with just the speaking from the like musical elements, or the sound elements rather, I hope that I hope I wrote in a way that allows like freedom within it, and that you guys sing it confidently and like with pride. I was really trying to put a lot of that in the like sonic world.
I would say that for those singing it and the ensemble, I would hope that they feel a sense of ownership and can embody the lyrics and the lyric, and not in a way that feels forced, but like this is in line or feels resonant with their feelings or their convictions or motivations for being a part of this ensemble. And I think for the audience, I hope that the synergy and collaboration of Danielle and I's work will be like a call to action for them. Is there something in your life, in your world, in your space that needs more attention and amplification, that needs a light on it? Is there something that has been marginalized in the space that you're in, or a person? I hope that it's something that would inspire or initiate a type of movement and dignifying of space and people around the audience members as they leave the space. And so kind of thinking about what happens afterwards in the moment, but what are the ripple effects of the after of the poem and the composition together.
That's beautiful. Thank you both.
Thank you.
All right, so we are very excited to premiere this awesome commission on our spring concert, April 30th at the Arco Cincinnati at 4 p.m. Please get your tickets at hearushearthem.org. And thank you to Danielle and Yalie for pouring your talents and your gifts into such an important work for us. We're very grateful.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yes, thank you.
All right. Thank you all. Have a
Thank
great night.
you.